Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrew Patricia, and over the last 20 or so years, I've been in my own business. But over the last 15 years, I've been working with business owners just like you, encouraging them, motivating them, and educating them how to build a successful business. And it's interesting when you work with a lot of businesses, it's amazing some of the things you learn. I find that often when you're teaching, as a teacher, you learn so many different things. So what I'm going to try and share with you today are some of the things that I've learned working with small business owners. What works for them, what doesn't work for them, and more importantly, which of these tools you can use to grow your business. And that's the key thing. I want you to walk away with a couple of things you need to look at straight away that'll improve your business. A lot of this will be reminders, but sometimes that's what we need. We need to be reminded of the basics of marketing to get us going. So let's start off with understanding a couple of guidelines when it comes to marketing. These are the basic principles that you and I have to really understand if we want to build a successful business. The first one is, if we really want our marketing to be effective, we've got to understand our target market. We've got to know who is the ideal customer. Which customer can we supply better than anybody else? And think about this. I think every single one of us, if being put on a spot and asked, we'd come up with the ideal customer for our business. Once we can identify those customers, you know what, then we go looking for more of those. And this is really what targeting your market is by identifying the customer that you can supply better than anybody else. The second thing, and such an important thing for business owners, is that we have to have some type of structure, some type of system, some type of things that guides us as we grow our businesses. So I would encourage every single one of you, if you haven't done it yet, you've still got 6 months to go, sit down now and decide what marketing tools are you going to use over the next 6 months to grow your business. And it's really about focusing on having a little plan that you're going to work to. The third thing we've got to do, and I think this is something that is so vital in building a successful business. We've got to understand that often we're very, very busy. Because we're very, very busy, we're not always that structured, or we don't plan as well as we should. So I would encourage you to allocate a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money towards your marketing. And just stick to that, because marketing is an ongoing process. It's not something you do when things are going really well or something you do when business is not so good. It's an ongoing process and something that you need to work on all the time. The fourth thing, or one thing that we've got to understand is important, is to be consistent. Be very, very careful of chopping and changing all the time. You know, come up with a logo that you like, come up with a look that you like, come up with a font that you like, and make sure that you're consistent. And this is how we grow our brand. Because in small business, that is the one thing that will allow us to charge a little bit more for our products or services, is if our clients identify with our brand, can relate to our brand, have seen our brand around. So make sure that you got this consistency, same colors, same uniforms, same customer service, all those things are important. And lastly, and one of the things that we don't like hearing, is that you've got to be patient. Marketing takes time. Marketing takes effort. You know, often, and you've seen these ads, you'll get them in your mailbox, we can do your search engine optimization for you, and we can get you to number one really quickly. I don't believe there's getting to a number one very quickly in any marketing. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes planning, and if you do that, you will build a successful business. But you've got to understand that it's going to take time. It's going to take time. And for some of us, a lot of time. You know, when business owners ask me and they say, well, what are we speaking? Well, it depends on the nature of the business, but typically the first 3 years are the most difficult for us. That's when we struggle to build our brand. So let's go and focus a little bit more on identifying our ideal customer. One of the first things you've got to learn to do as a business owner is, in a very short, concise way, learn to explain exactly what you do. And remember that it really depends on who you're selling to what you'd say. So understand that for some of us, it's really not that easy because we have different target markets or different groups of customers we sell to. But understanding what you do very, very clearly and you and your employees being able to explain is something that makes your marketing a little bit easier for you. The second thing is something that I mentioned on the previous slide is who is your ideal customer? You know, if I was sitting across from you drinking a cup of coffee that you've just paid for, and we were discussing your business, and I'd say to you, you can only choose one group. Who would these people be? You know, give me some details. How old would they be? How much would they be earning? Which part of the city would they come from? All these type of details make you become a more effective marketer. So you've got to try and identify who is your ideal customer. And sometimes it's based on profitability. You know, if you realize that this target market, when you sell to them, you make more profit, maybe that's the market you want to go after. And thirdly, and this is a very, very key thing, is as a business owner, you've got to identify reasons for me to buy from you. If we were sitting across the table again and you were trying to sell your product or service to me, what would the reasons be? Why should I buy from you? Is it your reliability? Is it the fact that you've got the largest range? What is it that you do that is unique, different, and special? And we've got to identify these things. The majority of business owners will say things like great customer service, we have great products, and our prices. Everybody says that. So saying those three things don't differentiate you from your competitors. You want to find those things that will add value to the service you're selling to your customer. And remember, whenever you're selling anything, think about the customer. And at the bottom of the screen here, I've got an acronym, which is WIIFM, and this is what's going through the customer's mind when they're looking at your brand or your products or your services. What's in it for me? So always think about that. Why should customers buy from you? What's in it for them? If you take that approach, it's going to make your marketing more effective. But you've got to come up with some unique, different, special reasons why your customers should buy your product or service. So let's go through on that same vein of becoming the right supplier to your customers is think about your value proposition. I know this is a big word. I don't normally use such long words in my webinars or when I'm writing, but I think in this case it's quite an important thing to use it. You know, try and identify what is it that makes you unique? What is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you stand out from your competitors? Because understand, as a buyer of products or services, I just have so many options. I just have so many options. And it amazes me that often when you ask people, you know, what is the most important thing when you and I buy products or services, we'll often say price. But then we prepare to pay for certain products or certain services a little bit more. And those are the type of things we need to try and identify. What is it that encourages us to pay a little bit more for certain products or services? And even go as far as justifying it because of this little bit of added value that they give us. So what specialized knowledge, what specialized experience do you have that your competitors don't? Think about this. Because remember, these are going to be the things that are going to differentiate you from your competitors. So when I come to your business and I want to buy your product or service, you will say to me, you know, we've been in the business for 50 years, or all our technicians are highly qualified, and blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, you need to try and identify those things. The other thing you might think about when you're trying to identify your key differentiators are, what do you do that's measurably better? You know, is there a service that you offer or a product that you offer that you can compare to other people in the industry and say, you know what, ours is 5% more better or 20% better or whatever it is. These are the key things that you're trying to identify. Because understand, this is what customers are looking for. They're going to spend $1,000 on your product or $1,000 on your service, but they're going to save 5% or 10% or whatever it is. So try to identify something like that. The other thing that we can do as small business is we can tailor our products or services to our customers' needs. We can build a relationship. We can sit down, we can have a discussion, and we can come up with a product or service that suit our target market. And this is something that I often discuss with our clients. I'll say, you know what, you can use anybody, but the nice thing about working with a company like ours is we can tailor the solution to your specific needs. And that is the key thing you need to try and identify, is that something that you do? And if that's the case, you need to broadcast it. You need to speak to these existing customers or prospects about some of those things that you do. The other one that could be an influencer, and in my case, it's probably not something that's that important, but if somebody's open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, that could influence my decision. But again, it depends on the nature of your business. You've got to understand that every single one of us in different industries have to identify what are those things that our customers value, and try and identify those and work through those. Because if you're opening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's no value to me as a customer, what's the point? This is a very interesting one, and I think one that you and I need to think about, is if you can quantify. Earlier on we spoke about what do you do that's measurably better, but if you can quantify things, it really helps. If somebody came into my office and said, you know what, if you replace all the lighting from these current lights to LEDs, you can save 10% on your utilities a year. Those are the type of things that could influence my decision. So maybe that's something that you can do. You can identify actual savings in percentages or dollars that people can relate to. This is another one. Convenience is quite an obvious one, but it could be quite an important one and actually could give you the competitive edge. Just think about, are you far more convenient than your customers? Or is that something that you offer? Like same-day delivery or order before 10 and we'll have it delivered to you this afternoon, whatever. People are prepared to pay for convenience and they value it. Actually, I'm working on an interesting program where I have 70 young business owners on this program where I'm coaching and educating them. And I find that people in that demographic, from 19 to 29 or to 34, seem to be prepared to pay for that convenience. So that could be one of your competitive edges, is speaking about that convenience. Obviously, if your product is a better product, you've designed something that it's a better mousetrap, that could be one of your competitive advantages. But the key thing, I think, with all of our marketing, with every single one of us, we've got to think about what is the customer's problem and why is our product or service the solution. So think about this all the time. What's the problem and why is mine the solution? Because then you can walk into an office and say, what are some of your challenges? These are the products or services we have to solve those problems. So think about this. And I think if you get nothing else out of this webinar but this little section where you focus on identifying your key differentiators and coming up with your value proposition, this is going to really help you. So I've put a couple of examples here that hopefully some of you can relate to. But the first one is Shopify at the top. And their value proposition is a very, very simple one, easy to understand. We can get you up and running in 30 minutes. So if you want to sell something online, on Facebook, on Pinterest, whatever it is, ours is the best solution. Just in 30 minutes, you can be up and running and you have a website that you can do e-commerce on. Okay, so that is their value proposition. They're not saying we're the biggest, we're the brightest, we're the cheapest. All they're saying is simplicity, easy to get online. Or FreshBooks, another one that's a good example. And a very, very competitive industry they're in. I mean, they're in the invoicing business. You can get free apps. There's just so many apps. And easy to use is the thing. So FreshBooks is simple and intuitive, so its accounting isn't intimidating. So these are some of the value propositions that you and I can relate to. And this is some of the reasons we use for buying other products or services. So think about your business and come up with a value proposition. So when you or your salespeople go out to see a client, these are the things you focus on. A one-liner that says, you know what, this is what differentiates us. So here's a great question actually, is how do you convince an uneducated customer that your product is better? A really good question. Well, the answer is very simple, is you educate them. I think one of the things that I have learned, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, is that marketing is often about educating. It's about putting the customer in a position that they can make their buying decision, and hopefully it's going to be our product or service that they're going to be buying. So think about that. So let's move on. So you've got the base. You've identified what your key differentiators are. You've identified the customer's problems and why your product or service is the solution. Let's move to the next step. Because once you have these things in place, once you've identified your ideal customer or your target market, once you've identified what differentiates you, the next step is to get out there and start marketing. I believe, and even though it's 2015, with all this technology that we have nowadays, that networking is still one of the most effective ways of growing our business. And I encourage every single one of you, if you haven't been networking regularly, you've got to understand the value. You've really got to understand the value of networking. It is a powerful thing and something that can really add value to your business. So let's start at the beginning. The first thing is set yourself some specific networking goals. For example, you might say, I want to meet one good contact every month. You know, I was speaking to a small business owner early on this morning that's been on our program for a few months, and she was saying, and I think it's such a key thing, she was saying, you know, what I like about being on training programs with other business owners are the contacts I make, the people that I connect with that I can benefit from in the future. And I think that is the key part of building a successful business. That business is still about relationships. I know it's 2015, we've got all this online media, but business is still about relationships. So understand, make it one of your goals over the next 6 months at least to get out there and network. Now, the one thing you don't want to do is to go to the wrong networking events. Or let me rephrase that. Often, when we get our business up and running or we're in the research stage, we go to tons of events and sometimes waste our time. But as your business grows, you know, you've got to be very, very specific because time becomes one of your most important commodities. So I would encourage you to do research. Try and identify exactly where your target market hangs out. Once you identify that, you want to hang out in the same place. It's really very simple, but not so easy to do. But that is exactly what you want to do. So do your research and find out what are the right events for you to meet customers. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just to ask your existing customers and say, you know, what events do you go to? What conferences you go to? What trade shows you go to? These are opportunities for you. So it's an important part of your research to identify these places. The third thing, and probably should be number one, is whenever you go to a networking event, is learn to ask questions and listen. Those two go in combination. Because I've found that when we go to events and we're inquisitive and we listen, we do more business. So understand the value of that. I know we all have that temptation, every single one of us. We're so excited about our business, we show so passionate about our business, we go to events and we want to talk about our business. But understand that nobody really cares about you. They care about themselves. You've got to understand that and try and identify, is this person somebody I want to do business with? The other lesson I've learned when it comes to networking is introducing yourself can be a really powerful thing. Because just think of it. Whenever you introduce yourself, think about the customer. What's in it for them? So if you want to really identify with me or relate to me, ask me first what I do, and then tell me how you can help me. So let's use an example. Say I was an accountant, and I'm not an accountant, so don't worry about that. But let's say I was an accountant. And you and I met up in an event, and you asked me a question, and you said to me, what do you do? And I said to you, I'm an accountant. And that's quite interesting, and my family will probably be very proud of me and things like that, but that's of no value to you. But if you ask me, what do you do? And I said, well, I help small business owners pay less income taxes. You know what? It changes the whole dialogue. If that's one of the challenges you're facing in your business, you'd be interested in talking more to me. So think about this. Whenever you meet somebody in an event, ask them first what they do, and then tell them a little bit about yourself. So if it's a small business owner, you would say we help small business owners save on their income taxes. So that's what I mean when I say introduce yourself properly. Also, you don't want to be known as that person that talks too much. So be very, very careful of that. Going to events and just speaking about as much as possible about whatever you speak about, don't do that. And the other thing is, don't sell at events. It's a very good habit not to sell. I'll give you a very good example. I went to a conference 2 weeks ago in Miami for my specific target market. So these are companies that sell to small businesses, and they're often looking for suppliers that can develop content for them and a bunch of other things. Anyway, but it was a very, very targeted. And I met a bunch of people, probably altogether about 10 people, about 2 or 3 that I thought realistically we could maybe do business with. But the key thing is that at the event, I didn't try and sell them anything. Asked them what they did, what their responsibilities were, and then told them a little bit about what we do, and then came back from the event and followed up and started building a relationship from there. And I think those are some of the opportunities for us, is when we go to events, make sure you introduce yourself properly by asking the person what they do first. Don't talk too much, and avoid selling if possible, sometimes difficult. Avoid selling at an event, especially if this is the first time you meet this person. I'm sure every single one of you have heard about the power of word of mouth. And we speak about it often. All your business owners say, you know, most of our business comes from referrals or whatever the comments they make, or most of our business comes from word of mouth. The key thing you've got to understand is that customers are talking about you. I think what's happened now with social media is this has been amplified. It's really been amplified. And this can be the best thing that ever happens to you, or can be your worst nightmare. So we've got to understand this as business owners, that people are going to keep talking about us, and ideally we want them to say positive things about us. And if we want them to say positive things about us, there are a couple of basic, really simple things we need to be doing. Is you got to offer your customers service that really shocks them and wows them. So make sure that your service is exceptional. That is the key thing. You've got to make sure that your service is exceptional. And just get the basics right. You know, some people, I see this on a regular basis, just get the simple basics right. They don't show up on time, or they don't do the job right. These are some of the things that you've got to understand. I think especially in businesses like home renovation or service type businesses. You know, you get so many different examples of how people do things badly. So focus on offering exceptional service. Always show up on time, and make this a condition of employment. You're late, we don't want to work with you. Do the job right, and once you've got the satisfied customer, get a testimonial from them. Your testimonials are one of your really best marketing tools. Because I may not believe, and I often don't believe what you say about your business, but your customers is a different story. Just think of what you and I do on a daily basis. We want to fly on vacation, we go and see what other people say about that. We want to go to a restaurant, we go and see what other people say about that. So you've got to understand the value of having testimonials, reviews, all those things. And if they're positive, it's going to make your sales so much easier. And that's the key thing. The other thing that I find is that when you've got great reviews and things like that, and your customers are happy with your service, they'll allow you to make mistakes every now and then. The next marketing tool that I think is very, very effective, that I think is often neglected nowadays. People will say things like, email marketing doesn't work anymore because of some of the laws and restrictions and things like that. I still believe that email marketing is one of the most effective ways to generate revenue for your business. But there are a couple of conditions. And if you do it wrong, it's really bad for your marketing. If you do it right, it can be really beneficial. So the first thing is, you've got to understand it's a great way to keep in touch and educate your customers. So keep that in mind. You want to educate them. So you maybe come up with a newsletter that you send out once a month or once every 3 months or whatever it is on a regular basis just to educate your customers. And it's really got to be educating. You want to make sure that it's educating your customers. We use the 80-20% rule. 80% education, 20% marketing. But often people say, how do I grow my database? Well, it's really not that complicated. And secondly, I want you to understand it's not about numbers, because people say, well, my database is not big enough. Well, it's not about size, it's about quality. If you have the right database, who cares how big or small it is? So make sure that you have some really good content on your website, and then have a sign-up form that people can put in their email address and request or give you permission to send them information on a regular basis. Once they've given you that information, you've got to send them really quality information that educates them. So a good lesson is to really create a nice topic, a nice heading that will interest your audience. Because one of the things that we have found that the subject line is vital in an email marketing campaign. If you've got the right subject line, that's really going to help you. So develop a great title for your email marketing newsletter. Include interesting and useful content. And most importantly is that you send it out on a regular basis. Send it out on a regular basis and make sure you personalize it. There are so many tools you can use nowadays. You can use vertical response, or you can use SendGrid or MailChimp. There's just so many now where you can personalize the email. You can say, Dear Andrew, here's some really useful information for you. So, and that's exactly what I want you to do. And the thing that I like about email marketing is that you can measure. Sent out 100 emails, got 2 responses. It gives you a number to work with. Whereas a lot of our marketing, we cannot measure. And you want to be measuring your marketing. You want to measure the effectiveness. I really like email marketing. As long as you get people's permission to send them information, you're okay. Then there's a whole lot of free marketing tools. And these things are simple, but they can be very effective. For example, a free consultation. We'll come into your premises, we'll give you a 30-minute consultation that you can, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it's going to help you improve your business. Again, these are the type of things you want. Because if somebody says to you, yeah, no problem, if it's free, you can come in, they could potentially become a client. Or you could read another way, you say, you know what, they may be looking at other options. So offer people a free consultation or free demonstration, but just let them try your product out. The second one is a free demonstration. I was in Costco yesterday. We're going to pick up a couple of things. And it just fascinates me how that is their key marketing thing. I mean, you and I don't see ads in newspapers and magazines for Costco, but their demos in store is their key thing. They do tastings, people try the product, and they buy it. Why do they do those tastings? Because it works. So understand that for some of us, just let people sample or demonstrate or try or whatever it is, that's sometimes the catalyst for them to buy our product or service. Another great opportunity are free seminars. And I know many small business owners that have used free seminars as a great way to market their services. They share their expertise, they share their knowledge with audience, who then in turn decide to buy their product or service because often when you're running a seminar, positions you as an expert. A great opportunity for you to do it. Get a bunch of potential clients in a room, educate them. I promise you at the end of the seminar, they'll come up to you and say, that was very interesting, but we'd like you to do that service for us. And I've seen web designers do it, people that do email marketing service, just so many different opportunities out there for you. So free samples or free webinars or seminars are a great opportunity. Actually, you're talking about seminars, webinars are also another great opportunity. Another thing you can do, and again, this is not going to work for all of us, is to do things like run ads on Craigslist, run ads on online forums where you can connect with people. Again, it depends on the nature of your business. But I know some small business owners, especially in the home renovation type business and things like that have used things like Craigslist, and maybe Craigslist is not the best example, but a bunch of sites like that to generate revenue. And some of them are free. Another big opportunity is to develop content for other blogs and magazines that draw traffic to your business, whether it's via email or social media or your website. These are some of the opportunities for you. So think about this. Is there an opportunity for you to develop content and share on other people's websites that you can draw traffic back to your website? List your business on online directories. We actually run a webinar on how to get onto online directories, and that's about a paid service that Deluxe offers. But for some of you that are on a limited budget, maybe just doing that one-on-one slowly on a regular basis and updating online directories could be an opportunity. Another great opportunity, obviously you need to have a bit of expertise, is to be a speaker at conferences. I've found that with a lot of business owners, this opens up opportunities. Some of the people they connect with, some of the customers or prospects that walk up to them to have a discussion, these are some of the opportunities. And finally, give away free coupons. So what I'm trying to get across is that there's a whole lot of ways you can spend money on marketing, but there's also a whole lot of ways you can do free marketing if you've got zero budget. Obviously, it may not be as effective and more time consuming, but often when you don't have too much money, you have more time. Now, a couple of times on this webinar, I've said that developing educational content can be very effective. Okay, so keep that in mind. Developing educational content can be very effective. So I would encourage you to make this part of your marketing plan. Try and identify, for example, blogs that you can develop content for, or create your own blog. I mean, I know some small business owners, one particularly that I can think of off the top of my head, that has used her blog as a centralized marketing point, and it has created so many opportunities for her. But again, it takes discipline. Like anything in business, it takes some discipline. So make sure that you develop really good quality content and share it on your blog. Create videos, create infographics, whatever it is, but create really good content. The second one is websites. Your website, every single time you load good quality content, and let me emphasize good quality content, onto your website, this improves your search engine optimization. Again, it's a slow process, but let's ignore search engine optimization. Let's focus on the customer. If you've got really good quality content on your website that's going to influence, first of all, it's going to educate me, and it's going to influence my buying decision, these are the way you've got to be thinking as a business owner. The other big opportunity is to share this content on Facebook. The nice thing about a lot of the content we speak about nowadays, we can repurpose it. We can put it on our blog, we can adapt it then for our website, we can maybe make a Facebook post out of it, maybe we create a video on our iPhone or whatever phone you have and create a YouTube video. We could post little posts on Twitter with graphics, we could create a seminar out of it, or we could teach a program on it. All of these things open up opportunities for us. So understand that we're in a time where people are seeking out education. And the reason they're seeking out education is it makes them more informed buyers. And that is something that influences a lot of our buying decisions. So understand that maybe this is one of your strategies, is you start identifying what are your customers' needs by asking them, and then develop really good content that they will then consume on your sites. I think with a lot of small business owners, that social media was, maybe even up to about a year ago, 2 years ago, this was the thing. Everybody was raving about social media. But you know what? Some of us have got a little bit despondent along the way, and some of us aren't using it as much as we used to use it. But let us understand the value of these communities, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is. These communities that we have online give us the opportunity to understand our customer better. They can share information with us, they can share their ideas with us, they can, all of those things are an opportunity. So I don't want any of you to give up on social media. Actually, I think we're having a seminar either next week or the following week on social media. I still think there are a lot of opportunities on there. But the key thing is you've got to think about your target market. Where are they hanging out on social media? Is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Whatever it is. Try and identify where they're hanging out, and then focus your efforts on that part. So focus your efforts on that social media. But really, building on an online community can never be a bad thing. If you've got 5,000 followers or 2,000 followers or 500 followers, it's not about the numbers. It cannot be a bad thing for your business, where these people share your content, share your photographs, and really help you build a community around your business. Let's go back again to more of the traditional, or let's call it old-fashioned ways of marketing. There are still a lot of us nowadays that are using traditional flyers or doing direct mail or whatever it is. And I don't care whether it's an online promotion, an offline promotion, the basics are exactly the same. Every single promotion that you and I develop, specifically if it's a promotional tool, it's got to do three things. Firstly, it's got to get the customer's attention or potential customer's attention. That is the first thing. So it's got to shout, look at me. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's got to create interest from this prospect or this customer. So grab my attention, the content must be interesting. It must make me want to buy. And finally, and most importantly, it must make me pick up the phone or email you or whatever it is. And every single one of us should, on a regular basis, collect samples of these, flyers that we really like, brochures that we've seen at different businesses, websites that we like, email campaigns that we like, whatever it is. But we've got to collect samples of really good quality marketing materials that we can then go to our designer and say, you know what, this is the type of thing I'm looking for. But the basics are very simple. If you want a promotion to really work, you've got to have a powerful offer that's going to attract my attention. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is make sure that you use really powerful headlines. Just think of any of us that read anything online today. Or just think of your email box. You know, when you're really busy and lots going on, what we do is we scan. We scan our email box, or if you're reading online, we scan what's online. And if there are powerful headlines that attract our attention, we'll then read it. One of the companies that I think does a really superb job is the Huffington Post. Many times I've read really useless articles, but based on the headlines that they basically draw you in. If possible, use some interesting images and photographs. Use color, it's more effective. And have a strong call to action, and that's the key thing. Okay, so powerful heading, interesting photographs or images, try and use color if you can, and say, call us. You know, one of my real pet hates is when I see small business owners with flyers and they put their business name right at the top. People do not buy from you because of your business name. They buy from you because of something that you're offering, some product or service that influences them or that they need. So understand that. The final point and a key thing is distribute wisely. It really frustrates me when business owners say, you know what should be the expected response rate? Well, the answer is it depends. If you just blanket a city with 100,000 flyers and don't target your market, well, your response rate is going to probably be very, very low. Again, so the response rate really depends on the design, the targeting your market. All those things are going to influence the results you get. So understand that if you want good results, there are a couple of basic things. Spend money on design. And nowadays, there are just so many options for us. We can find somebody online, on Kijiji, on Create, whatever. On those places, we can find people that can design for us, okay? Or somebody in your local community, or your local designer, whatever he or she is. Always focus on benefits. So think about this. What's in it for the customer? Why should she get in her car and come to my store? Or why should he pick up the phone and call me? Or why should they click on this link and buy my stuff? So focus on the benefits. That's going to influence their decision. We spoke earlier on about the power of word of mouth, but testimonials really help. So don't be afraid to put a testimonial on a flyer that you're distributing, a testimonial from a well-known business in your community that customers can relate to. Don't be afraid to do that. That could often be the tipping thing. The tipping point, people decide, you know what, if she buys it, I maybe should look at it. And finally, and most importantly, is don't give up. And I've got to make sure that you understand this, that marketing can be painful. We don't always get the results, but that is not a good reason to give up on marketing. You've got to make sure you never give up on marketing. The other big opportunity is something that we're going to be running a webinar on over the next few weeks. I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but I remember seeing that I'm going to be running a webinar on how to get free publicity. But I think this is a massive opportunity. You know, I think in 2015, being a business owner is something that a lot of people aspire to. And because a lot of people aspire to being a business owner, a lot of the magazines, newspapers, blogs, a lot of these organizations and this media are looking for stories to speak about. You know, if you just scan through the channels on TV nowadays, there's quite a few programs about small business owners. Actually, it's quite a popular thing. So understand this opens up opportunities for you and I as business owners to get free publicity. And there are a couple of basic rules if you want to get free publicity. If you think about these are some of the things you've got to think about. Number one is target your media. Who is your ideal customer and what magazines, newspapers, online forums, blogs, blah, 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 does she read? So that's the first thing, identify that. Once you've done that, you want to create a press release. And let me say something to you. The media do not want to read your story. They want a story that is interesting to their audience. So always take that into consideration. You know, do I have some real news? Do I have a great story with a catchy headline that will attract the media's attention? And things that attract the media's attention are things like being first, being unique, if you've got a local angle, something that's interesting, that's taking place, whatever it is, but try and find an interesting story. And finally, and most importantly, is that often business owners give up. Even though we teach them and we tell them it's not that difficult, they send out a couple of press releases, then they get despondent, and they say, you know what, it's too much work. For others, if you've got a bit of budget, you know what, find somebody in your community. Remember, it's not too difficult to get publicity for your business. So it's an opportunity, and it's something that can generate a lot of traffic for your business. Now, nowadays, a lot of us are doing our marketing off our website. I mean, I can think of maybe 5 years ago, or even 7 or 8 years ago, your website was your core marketing tool. Over the last few years, that's changed. We got like offline marketing now, we've got social media, we've got our website, all those type of things. I think there'll be businesses in the future that don't even need a website. But the reality is that nowadays, I think often your website acts like your business card. It's really your business card. I meet you at an event. I think we can potentially do business. I go to your website, I go and see what type of company you are. So I would recommend that if that's the case, just make sure it's very, very simple. The first thing is keep your layout simple. Because if you start getting all fancy or flashy, you know what, it's really a waste of money now. It's really a waste of money. You want to keep it really simple. The second thing is make sure your website is optimized for cell phones, for iPads, for all those type of things. Because a lot of people nowadays are going onto their phones and looking for stuff. So if your website is not mobile app optimized, you know what, they can't see any of your content. And I think the key thing is the simplicity of a website. Nowadays, you don't want a lot of content on. You only want the relevant content that's relevant to your clients. Test different designs, and I still think simple things are what you need to do. And another opportunity for some of you, especially if you're running specific campaigns, email campaigns or Google AdWords campaigns, is to build landing pages for specific campaigns. So when you run a promotion, you build a specific page for that promotion. When it comes to your website, make sure you add great content, keep it up to date, and include some testimonials for credibility. So understand that this really helps when people can read a testimonial from your customer. Don't be afraid to ask for testimonials. And finally, and most importantly, having a website without a marketing plan is a waste of time, which a lot of us have. We don't get the traffic. We often forget about our websites. So make sure that you come up with something that's simple and effective. Two of my favorite examples here are on the screen now. One is Shopify for simplicity of design, and another one is HubSpot, which is really a great resource, and somebody that uses content really well to draw customers to them. So maybe you could go and visit these two sites and get some ideas on them on how to build a great responsive website. So think about that. Anyway, so let's move on. Sorry, I'm just trying to, what's wrong with this little mouse thing? There you go. Technology doesn't try and always work. So let's just have a couple of final tips, and then if anybody's got any questions, you'll put them in the chat column and I'll answer them for you. So let's go through. If you just stick with these 10 things, I know for a fact that you're going to improve your marketing. Number one is sit down over the next week or so and sit down and look at your customer database and identify which customers can you supply better than anybody else. Which customers do you love working with? Those are the customers that are usually your ideal customer. So try and identify who those people are in your existing business. The second thing is you've got to differentiate your product or service. So sit down with, if you've got partners or with your employees, and try and identify what is it that makes us different. What is it that makes us unique? What is it that makes us different to our competitors that we can focus on when we go and sell our product or service? Because remember, the value that we add is what influences customers' decisions. The third thing, and really one of the most important ones, is you've got to develop a marketing plan. It's really a bit of structure. And maybe if you don't like the word marketing plan, really a marketing to-do list. Things that you need to do on a regular basis to generate revenue for your business is what your marketing plan is. Build a brand. You know, so come up with a logo. We had an interesting webinar last week or the week before on branding, on logos. Those things are so important. And I want you to take it seriously because it influences the customer's buying decision. You've got to look the part. And if you want to sell your business one day, it even plays a more important part in your business. So build a brand. Offer great customer service and ask people for testimonials. Don't be afraid to go to your customers and say, you know what, a testimonial will really help us grow our business. Can you give us a testimonial? Network on a regular basis. Where will I discuss the importance of setting yourself networking goals, going to the right events, asking questions, and introducing yourself properly, and doing it on a regular basis. Get free publicity. If you're not the best writer in the world, find somebody in your community. Find a publicist, find a PR person at one of your local colleges or in your community. Let them help you try and get some free publicity. Build a database. Start doing it now. Because once you've got a database of names, you can then communicate with them. And you can communicate with them on a regular basis. just think of it, even for your existing customers, if you don't remind them regularly that you're in business, they're going to forget. Use free online marketing tools. So test some of them. I mean, if you're comfortable using social media, go and use it. Use Facebook, use LinkedIn, use Twitter, but build an online community and use some of these free online marketing tools that can really be effective if used properly. And finally, and most importantly, remember that marketing is about education. It's about educating this customer about the benefits of your product or service and making them better buyers. So develop educational content, whether it's in the form of blog posts, seminars, webinars, whatever it is, develop this content. And I know that if you use these 10 tips, you can build a successful business. And that is what I wish for every single one of you, that you take this information, that you go this afternoon, you start working on this information, you build a successful business, you create jobs in your community, and you create a business that you absolutely love. That is what I wish for all of you. But you know what? You've got to work on the marketing. You've got to build a brand. You've got to do this on a regular basis. That's the only time it works.